Today, we'll be discussing the super speed workspace of a RAM. What does RAM stand for? Random access memory. So, check this out. If the CPU is the brain, the RAM would be the desk. And desk, I mean, think of it as if it were a library, In the library, there's books on a shelf. Books on a shelf would be what? The HDD. What does HDD stand for? Hard disk drive. That's where everything is stored. And when you walk into the library, what do you need? You need a couple of books. You tell the CPU, which will be the librarian. You tell the CPU that, okay, I need 1, 2, 3, and 4 books on this topic, and then the bigger the desk, the more books that you can put on the desk, and that's where you'll get your information. You'll put all the books that you need on the desk, and that's what the RAM is. You find your knowledge from the RAM, and you don't find it from the hard disk drive. It goes from hard disk drive to the RAM to the user, and easy to read on the RAM. So the RAM is the desk, and not just any desk, but it is the desk where every project, every idea, and every crazy late night assignment actually happens. The bigger the desk, the more you can spread out and the faster your work is. That's the game-changing role of RAM. The super speed workspace unleashing your computer's true potential. Yeah, so here's the deal. Storage is like a giant filing cabinet or the shelf in the library filled with books. It is massive but painful and slow to dig through. And then the RAM is the desk. It is fast and temporary and right now memory. Read only memory, right now memory, things that you want to know right now. And the CPU would be the brain. It can only work with what is on the desk. If there's nothing on the desk, there's nothing that the CPU can do. So the more RAM, the bigger the desk, the more projects open without tripping over yourself. That's why the PC files with 16 gigs but crawls with 4. And then we look at the RAM family tree. There's different people in the RAM family tree, and that family tree will be called the DDR generations. What does DDR stand for? Yes, it stands for double data rate. So the RAM evolves like superheroes. There's the DDR3, which is the old veterinarian, which with 240 pins, and then there's the DDR4, and that is the current champion with 288 pins, which is faster and leaner. And then there is the DDR5, the next generation powerhouse, with the same 288 pins, but with a new groove and built-in power control and insane speeds. And that is exam gold here. If they don't fit each other, the notches are different. Try to jam DDR4 into a DDR3 slot. That would be like forcing an iPhone charger into a toaster. That doesn't work. Okay. Have you ever looked at a RAM stick and seen something like DDR4 3200, PC4 25600? That looks like alien code, right? But here's the hack. DDR4 3200 is the speed, which transfers per second, which is the PC for 25600. That is the bandwidth, how many megabytes it can shove through per second. And the second formula, the secret formula here, would be speed times 8. Speed times 8, which is 3,200 times 8, which would be equal to what? 25,600. Done. And the analogy would be megabytes, mt per second is the engine's RPM, and then megabytes per second is the top speed. Both numbers matter, and now you know how to read them, like the matrix. Okay, And then now we're talking about the dual channel mode, how to supercharge your system. One stick of RAM is like driving in a single lane road at rush hour, and then you add another stick in the right slot, and then boom, you have dual channel, which is 2 lanes, then that is double the bandwidth, and then the traffic is gone. Always install the RAM in pairs. Mismatched sticks are like mismatched socks. They still work, but you look dumb and you don't get the boost. For exams, the real life check is to always check your motherboard manual for the right slot, and that is free speed, and you'd be crazy to ignore. Okay, and now we talk about troubleshooting when a good RAM goes bad. Here's where the nightmare begins. A bad RAM causes everything from random crashes to the dreaded blue screen of death, a frozen cursor, corrupted files, and the system that won't boot. And the motherboard just screams at you in beep codes. But here's the magic trick. 90% of RAM problems are solved by reseating it, which means you just power off, pop it out, and push it back in, and then boom, fixed. Not sure if your RAM is toast? Okay, let's talk about the testing tools, which is the memory doctor. Use the right tools, which is the MAM Test 86. That is the gold standard that boosts before the OS. It scans your RAM like a futuristic brain scanner. The Windows Memory Diagnostic, which is the built-in quick check, easy to run pro move. It tests each stick individually. That's how you isolate the guilty one. Run it overnight if your PC feels haunted. The RAM doesn't lie under these tests. Okay, now we're going to talk about ECC and non-ECC, which is the servers and desktops. Most of you have the non-ECC. Wait, what does ECC even stand for? Error correcting code. Yeah. The non-ECC RAM, that is fast, cheap, and perfect for gaming and browsing. But servers, banks, hospitals, and NASA, they need the ECC, which is the error correcting code RAM. Think of it as a bouncer at the door, catching trouble before it ruins the party. Slower, pricier, and needs a special motherboard. You can't just drop ECC into your gaming rig. It's a different species. Okay, let's get practical. How much RAM do you actually need? Okay, you need 8 gigs, which is the bare minimum, which helps with the emails, the docs, and the Netflix. And then the 16 gigs, which is the sweet spot, which helps with gaming, multitasking, and smooth life. And then the 32 gigs is or more, which helps creators, virtual machines, hardcore power users. And always check your motherboard's maximum supported RAM before you buy. Otherwise, you'll spend big money on sticks your board can't even use.